Yeah, that didn't work out.
We are live just now.
Boom,
jumping
here we go.
in. We just got done talking about some Colts, some Bears, all the off the field, behind the camera scene stuff about all the cool shit, all our fantasy football leagues, how Jameis Winston saved the day in my leagues, but ruined it for JT and his. Interceptions are not a friend of fantasy football, especially when you get 2, 3, and 4 points negative for these picks. But Jameis is my guy. We got plenty of time to talk about him. We got a whole show ahead, so thanks for joining in. So this is it. This is the final week of fantasy football for most fantasy football leagues. In my home leagues, I do a division playoff for week 1, and then I do a regular 13-week schedule after that. So that ends up being a couple reasons for that. A, there's a win for the highest score in week 1 in we have divisions in all my leagues, so I like divisions a lot. The highest score in our division gets a win. The middle player gets a tie. The middle scoring player gets a tie, and the lowest scoring player gets a loss. And that ends up being, I end up also scheduling by hand the entire schedule. So weeks 2 to 4 is a division game, and weeks 12 to 14 are also division games also. So you end up playing every one of your division opponents 3 times. So that's a tiebreaker also in your divisions. So head-to-head and then division games. It ends up being it's a little bit of work for me to do all these leagues by hand, schedule-wise and stuff like that. But I love doing it. Jeff's here also, commissioned a bunch of leagues. There's not enough changes in my league that could deter me from not being a commissioner of my fantasy football leagues. I love doing this. My favorite thing to do, especially now when it's coming down to last week and there's 4 or 5 people in the same divisions or opposite divisions. Everything's laid out in my bylaws also, how everything works. So if anybody says, whoa, wait a minute, I beat him in week 2, then we go back, look at that post on my pin sheet, the rules. Let's go back, section 2, section 4, section 18, whatever it is. It's right there. This is why it is, because, he had a tie, you had an extra loss, blah, 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 whatever it may be. It's absolutely fantastic this time of year. So it's nail biter time. I just finally secured the bye in my 2 biggest money leagues. I got a first round bye yesterday into my 2 biggest money leagues. So those alone, if I win a championship, either one of those pays for all of my fantasy football leagues all season long, plus some. And it's like, at this point in time, everything else is gravy, and I'm in pretty good shape in a lot of leagues. When you're in 20-some leagues, you better win a couple. That's just kind of how it works. It doesn't work that great all the time, but, I have gone skunked in years past when I had 15 or 16 leagues. So, it ain't like I'm making money every year, but I'm not losing money because I at least win my divisions or shit like that. But, man, it's tough. How are you guys doing? JT, we'll start with you.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, but you're in 50 leagues. Like, how many do you have to, win or get the playoffs in to feel like you did okay? Because I'm looking at some of these leagues, I'm like, I thought I was a lot better in a lot of these leagues. But I realized I had so many startups and so many teams that I took over as orphans that were bad teams where I was rebuilding. I was kind of feeling bad about myself. I was like, man, I got a bunch of terrible records. And I felt a little bit better when I realized a lot of those teams were rebuilding teams from the beginning. So, but no, it's like we talked about the picks. Jameis has given to me with the picks. I've once made the championship game of a league and won the league because I was losing with no one playing on a Monday night, and Jameis threw a pick on the last drive of the game for -2 points, and I won by a point. So he has given to me in the past with that interception, but I did lose 2 games in my 2 home leagues, which one was to get me in the playoffs. The other one would have kept me in second. Instead, I dropped down to 5th with the picks late on both of those games. He crushed me on both games as both the defensive old school leagues where we play defense. So I had the teams I was playing both had the Broncos defense. So that one killed me. But I did win one league where another guy, he was like, we got -4 interceptions in this league. I was like, I didn't realize we did that either. No, yeah, I ended up beating him by a point when he threw that last pick in the end zone. So it does give and it takes it away. But I'm in a decent position in most of my leagues. My big money league, my 1 home league, I'm going to miss the first time playoffs for the first time in a decade of running this league. I've never not made the playoffs. I've never not finished in the top 4. I think one time I didn't finish in the top 4. And I got off to a 1-7 start in this league, and I was done ski. So I've been making trades like crazy in this league, trying to get guys that are on IR trying to get guys that I can get a bunch of. I think I only had like 2 draft picks coming in this draft, and now I think I have 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 3 thirds. So I've been making moves. So I'm ready for the draft already in that league. But it's going to be exciting. I've got a lot of leagues. I don't know about you guys. I got a lot of leagues that everybody's jumbled up from second to like 8th. And this last week is going to be a monster, like determining like playoff position, who makes the playoffs, who barely misses it. I've got a ton of leagues. I got one league I'm in second to last right now. And if I win this week, I can move all the way up to 5th and make the playoffs. And I'm second to last right now going into the week. It's crazy.
That's a good league when it's that close and everything. And everybody's paying attention. Everybody's got set lineups. One mistake and you're out kind of thing. That's awesome. Jeff, how's your leagues doing? How many are you in? How many are you in contention in? What's going on with those?
I'm in 28 leagues, so not quite as many as both of you. I am having a fairly decent year. Some of the leagues I wanted to do well in, I'm not. Other leagues I didn't expect to do well, and I'm in contention or I've already clinched a berth. So I'm fairly satisfied. The last few years I have started very weak. It's like I'd take a look at my aggregate leagues and I'd be sitting at like a 250 winning percentage after 4 weeks and just dreading the rest of the season. And then I'd make a comeback. This year was a little bit different. I started off strong and then just kind of started tapering off. So it's, I've struggled to hold on in a few leagues. A couple of them I've lost spots, but overall I'm feeling fairly good. It was funny. You were talking about past years where you've, barely made any playoffs. I had one year where it didn't matter what it did. It was like quicksand. The more I tried to conduct transactions, the more the waiver wires, the trades, I got worse. And I think in that year, I may have made the playoffs in like 4 leagues out of 20 some leagues. And I didn't win a championship. So that one is a season that I would like to forget. This year's I'm definitely in better contention. You were talking about scenarios and where everybody is. Today, I posted to a lot of my leagues the different scenarios. And as JT was saying, you have some of these leagues, there are so many teams that are just hovering around 500. So it made this. I have one league, a 12-team league, where I got 9 teams that are in contention for the playoffs. And so trying to, post all the scenarios, it was quite a daunting task. Usually it's a lot easier by week 13. So I worked a lot on that this morning and when I should have been, working my day job. So, but that was fun. So I'm feeling good.
That's all my list of things to do is break down a few scenarios. I've already had some texts this morning like, oh, where are we at? What do we got to do this week? I was like, all right, I'm like, give me the rest of the day. I was like, I got a couple podcasts and I'm going to like get in here and start like hammering out some of these scenarios and tiebreakers. And John, when you were saying, going back and look at your league rules, that is my number one thing I got to do with this off season is update all my league rules. I got to take your list and use yours as like a baseline, the outline for my league and go in and fix some things. Cause I noticed there's a few things on mine that are up in the air that we've had some issues with the last couple of years. I was like, oh, I need to put that in a full document. So that's what I'm going to do this off season. I'm going to get in, take your copy of our league rules and just adjust it for all my leagues.
I would, first of all, a couple recommendations about that as a commissioner, unless you're going to use the divisions and you're going to put the time in to change the schedules and all that other stuff like that, I wouldn't just copy and paste it. And B, second of all, I would make sure before you touch anything, everything goes up for a vote, article by article. In the offseason, the time, take a whole week to vote on every individual article. If you're going to change stuff, say this is what it was before, this is what it's going to be in the future, that we all agree, blah, 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 and hash up. I have 28 articles in my bylaws. So sometimes it takes 2 weeks per article and sometimes 3 to 4 articles pass in one day. But you have to go make sure that every individual thing, because if somebody loses on something you changed, and they had to copy the original rules and blah, 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 it's nothing more but headaches and headaches, completely transparent, and everything you do as commissioner. It makes it easier for everybody, and it makes it fun because people get to see it, watch the change, and I think doing that kind of stuff makes people understand the rules better. So at least they know the rules anyway, and when they refer to them, they can go like, oh yeah, I remember that. So I like my rules, but they're not for everybody, man. Some people hate divisions. Some people hate, the extra game, the extra, the things I throw in there. The people hate that. I'm in one league where if you win the toilet bowl, you only get picked 313 instead of 113 like the other leagues. They say that's bullshit. Why should the toilet bowl winner get an extra first round pick? Blah blah. And other people are like, man, you should get 2 first round picks if you win the toilet bowl because you're so bad, or you're the shittiest team. The loser of the toilet bowl should get something else. Hey, the rules are set up this way. Just follow them. That's kind of how it is. You can bring something else to a vote and we'll debate it, and that's what it is. But I love being a commissioner for those reasons because everybody understands, and I know I can pretty much navigate my rules. Now, some people ask me questions, and I'm like, oh, hold on. Before I say anything, I have to refer back to that individual league's rules because not all of them are the same. They all, even though they started out as a base sheet, every one of them has different intricacies. As far as there's some leagues that wouldn't let you put guys on COVID, on IR when they had COVID. They said, oh, it's bullshit. You drafted them, blah, blah. I'm like, the guy got COVID. How is it my fault? That's like the same as something else, like guy getting suspended. It shouldn't be a punishment for me having roster spots for guys that didn't do anything besides get sick. So I don't know. They're all different, but whatever they vote in, you gotta do. That's just kind of how it is. But I appreciate you guys. I like you guys were talking before earlier too about scenarios. Last year I made a video every week about scenarios, and it's a little bit too much. Like, hey, this guy made fun of everybody, and when you're doing a video for 8 leagues, and you got to try and get stuff straight and read it, and it took a little bit too longer. So I waited till last week to start my video scenario. So I made like a 4-minute video for each individual league and kind of saying, hey, here's where guys are at. This is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And some people, said, hey, thanks for that. Some people didn't give a shit, but for me, at least I don't have to answer 1,000 text messages about what about this and what about this. I went through everything and kind of explained it as is so everybody could see it. So whether or not you want to wait and spend 4 minutes watching it or whatever, I'm not going to, I'll say, look, it's my version to say, go back on the message board and look at my video, that kind of stuff. It's all explained. I'll do it again this week too. To say like this, what has to happen. I got my first round bye in a couple leagues. I'll make sure I'll rub that in everybody's face that I mentioned that I got the first round bye. Things like that. It's your job as commissioner to tease the league a little bit and get everybody kind of all fried up a little bit too. So
yeah, John, I always watch your videos, but it's when you only have a couple leagues, it's so much easier to do a bunch of that stuff. I remember when I was just running, like I was in like 4 leagues, I was running 2. And I would like do a huge update like every week. And then I'm like, okay, guys, I'm running way too many leagues. I'm in a bunch of stuff. And then I was like, some guys were mad they missed the update, but I think they were like, okay, I realized that this is taking you a ton of extra time. And like I said, when I was only doing like a couple leagues, it didn't take as much time. But then when you're spending hours setting your lineups every week, it's like, do I have time to do that as well? So I understand that. But I appreciate it, John, as someone in the league. I like the updates.
Yeah, buddy. All right, so we're going to move on to the show. We have our regular here, Mr. Chris B. Oh, man. Thanks for joining us. Chris. I got another from Brandon Hallen. If Aziz hit Lawrence any harder, he would be implanted in the field looking like an Easter Island head. Yes, that was a shitty play. We'll talk about that. It's actually in our notes. So as the biggest Trevor Lawrence and Jameis Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold, and Jameis Winston are my 3. Like if I had kids, I would name them, now knowing what I know, they'd be Trevor, Sam, and Jameis, but we'll talk about that in a little bit here. So first things first, we'll get to the injuries real fast. I think I had you guys participate a little bit, but this is kind of last minute show stuff today. So I'm going to run through all the injuries real fast. You guys can jump in and say whatever you want. We'll talk about, first of all, Trevor Lawrence, concussion on paper, Lawrence will probably miss a game or so, but I think they're going to shelf him for the week, for the season, to be honest with you. They got nothing to prove. Baker Mayfield, calf abrasion. Maybe he'll probably come back this week. Taysom Hill's out for the season-ending IR for all of us fantasy football nerds. Breece Hall, right knee, probably play this week. Bucky Irving, we'll talk about that later, but he came off looking pretty sore. Those things could be kind of tricky. Christian McCaffrey, PCL, if you saw that. That looked pretty bad. He's out he's on IR. He's out for fantasy season anyway. Jordan Mason, his backup, is also out for the season on IR. DK Metcalf, ankle, probably back this week. Rashard Bateman, Batman, knee, out probably a couple weeks. Ladd McConkey, hip, knee. Those are tricky, probably maybe a week or 2. And Dallas Goedert, knee, probably a week or 2 also. He's been dinged up a little bit this week, but this year, but that's what happens when you get, Glad McConkey. Dale Stoddard. He seems to get a little bit banged up every year. Dalton Schultz probably back this next week with a shoulder injury. So any other injuries that I missed out on, you guys, that you could think of that are important to the game of fantasy football? I think I covered most of them. These are mostly from the 4for4 fantasy site, which I am a subscriber to. Happy subscriber to it. A lot of good information on there. So, and then we also have here the waivers. So first of all, Isaac Guerrero. I drafted Isaac Guerrero in a bunch of places just because of his freak natural ability. He's shown on the field plenty of times this year. Isaac Guerrero is somebody I would probably spend a lot of fab on because of the fact that he's going to get first crack at a lot of the touches. Jonathan Brooks looked pretty good in a few touches he had this week. Sincere McCormick seems to be a fan favorite in a lot of these, a lot of Waiver-Wire articles. Sincere McCormick is somebody that going after.
Hopefully, if he gets some playing time, he gets in there. He's looked pretty good. McCormick was actually a guy I really liked coming out of UTSA. I liked him a lot coming out of college. I thought he might get a shot. He's basically been on the practice squad the last 2 years. But I like him. If he can get in there and keep getting playing time for the Raiders, I love it. He's definitely, him and Guerrero are high on my list. Obviously, I have a ton of CMC, so I'm trying to get Guerrero everywhere I have any money left. Quarterbacks are big. I don't know who else out there has guys, but I've got a ton of Lamar Jackson and Anthony Richardson, both on buys this week. Also, if you have CJ Stroud on a buy, killer. In Superflex leagues, I'm like dying to find even a starting quarterback this week in a few leagues. So if you get out there, the guys go out there and try to get, if they're not already picked up, Aiden O'Connell just coming off the IR. A lot of people forgot about him last week because he was on IR all week till the game. Had actually a really great game against the Chiefs. I've got to play him in a big league this week, so I hope he has another big game. So O'Connell's a guy out there to look for, and then Mac Jones. If you haven't gone out and got Mac Jones yet for the Jags, I've been trying to pick him up in every league I can get him. I already had him in a bunch of leagues because I have T-Law in a bunch of leagues. So, but if I hadn't had him, he was the guy I was going out and getting. And then the last one is what's happening in New York. Is it going to be Drew Lock again, or are they going to go back to DeVito? So both of those guys are up for waiver wire pickups if you're also needing a QB this week. And I don't know. I'll talk about it now, I guess. Trade scenarios. If you're looking to go trade for someone, the guy that I seem like I'm getting the most traction with having a shot at getting is Derek Carr. For people who are looking like missing the playoffs and they're like, I'm like in a couple leagues, I'm like desperate for a QB. Derek Carr seems to be the one guy that everybody feels like they're willing to give up this late in the year if they're missing the playoffs. So he's kind of been my trade target as far as quarterbacks are concerned.
I got a buy in the first round of playoffs. I just traded a 26th third-round pick, which is a team that's stacked right now, for Derek Carr, a guy who had 4 quarterbacks, didn't feel the need to have Derek Carr on his team.
I just offered a second for him, and I'm hoping I can make it happen. I got a 2 QB league where I ended up winning my division with no starting quarterback for the last 3 weeks. In a start 2 QB league, that's how crazy this is. 48-team league. I ended up beating my the other guy in my division. We were tied for first. I ended up beating him last week with no QB. So I'm like, I need Derek Carr because I've got T-Law in that league and I've got Mac Jones, but of course T-Law got hurt, and so I had Mac Jones on my bench. I should have just played both of them. But yeah, so now I'm sitting there looking for Derek Carr to at least get one guy in the lineup for me. So trying to make a move. Of course, everyone's trying to get a first out of me because they're like, oh, you're desperate. Yeah. You need somebody. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I can give him a first for Derek Carr. I'm like, come on, man. So, yeah, it's rough.
Jeff, how about you? What did I miss on this list?
I don't know if anybody that's missed on there. Again, I think the last time I was on here, we talked about Westbrook Akine, again, very touchdown dependent, but he keeps catching the touchdown. So I think I heard a stat where they saying 8 touchdowns and out of 20 receptions. That's remarkable. Again, is that sustainable? But I mean, they're going to him. So I think if he's still out there, somebody definitely wants to pick him up. I don't know where you're getting. I don't know where you're, getting anyone to accept quarterback trades for a second or third round. Because, like you were saying, JT, everybody wants to gouge me, and so I mean, I have some needs in a couple leagues, and I just haven't made a move. I think I had to start one week where I was it week 12, where I didn't even have a starting quarterback, and I still almost won, but I just couldn't make a move, and there was nothing. I mean, literally nothing on the wire. So kudos to both of you for being able to get Carr for those picks. If I try that, I'm not getting that. I'm not successful. I know that already.
Well, I send out about 757 trades a day, so every once in a while I get one that goes through. But this guy that I got Derek Carr from, he's got Tua, he's got Justin Herbert, he's got Drake May, he's got who else is on his team? I don't know why did I. He has 4 quarterbacks anyway that are pretty game. Herbert, May. I don't know why he's got someone else. It's buried on the IR, but he's got 4 quarterbacks. It was his 5th quarterback. So I said, all right, I'll take a stab at it. And sure enough, I think he saw the Taysom Hill game last week and kind of got scared a little bit, said that Taysom Hill's going to take over. Now, with Taysom Hill out of the question, we'll see how that works out. But all right. So waiver wires and injuries, that's a lot of people kind of already know that who are already playing the games, but it's nice to hear some trade targets. So we'll hit these quick hits now, 32 teams. JT, Bears. We're going to go through all 32 teams. I'm going to just quick hit each one of these guys, get about 30 seconds to kind of shoot some information towards us. JT, Bears. The problem is not Caleb Williams, right?
It's not. Obviously, he had some issues earlier in the year, but you're going to get that with a rookie no matter who he is. But he's learned. He's playing better. The second the game was over on Thanksgiving, I was like, Eberflus is going to get fired. There's just no way he's not getting fired. I mean, he was already on the verge anyway. And then just the way he's handled these last couple of weeks is just, you knew what was going to happen. Obviously, the talk here in Bears country is rampant on who they might get. I tell you what, I'm just going to throw it out there. I think if Daboll gets fired by the Giants, if they can hire Daboll, I think it would be great. I think the other option would be if you can get Daboll as their offensive coordinator and you can turn around and get Mike Vrabel as the head coach. I think Vrabel would steady the ship there if he can get some good coordinators that handle the coordinating duties and he's just the overall head guy. I think that could work for the Bears. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I'm actually glad to hear that you're not talking Ben Johnson, because that's all I've been hearing is so many Bears fans that want Ben Johnson, and I'm not saying don't take Ben Johnson because we do want to keep him as an offensive coordinator, but I'm saying that because I don't know that Ben Johnson is actually going to make the greatest head coach. He's quiet, or he's reserved. He's not. I've read stories and heard things where he's not necessarily the greatest leader of men. And, out of the two of them, I think, why do I keep wanting to say Aaron Donald? Wow. I'm a Lions fan. I can't even remember our defensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn. He is, I think he's much better suited as a head coach than Ben Johnson. And so I'm just happy to hear that. I think Daboll would be a great opportunity, and the fact that Vrabel didn't even get any kind of offer this past season was very curious. So I think where is he? He's DC where or he's not even the DC right now. Right?
Yeah. I don't think he's on a staff this year. And if he is, if he is, I might be wrong on that. If he is, if somebody out there knows is listening, hit us up with it. He might be just just not a coordinator, but he's like assistant somewhere, just helping with odds and ends on a team, like a senior assistant or something. But he's not a coordinator for anyone this year. I think he got a raw deal in Tennessee. I mean, there was nothing. He did more than anyone could with that team the last couple of years. So I just like him. And like you said, I think Johnson is a really good offensive coordinator, but man, that's where I think you see a lot of problems with a lot of these guys. Is like, they're like, okay, now be the head coach. Well, they still want to be the offensive coordinator, and then they're not paying attention to all the other head coaching duties. And while it's great to be the head coach, sometimes these guys are just built better to be coordinators, especially when you're more of an X's and O's guy. It's just, that's your game. That's where you excel. You're not necessarily the best guy to be having tough conversations with players, because you're like, I'm the scheme guy, and the head coach has got to be able to handle, all the different intricacies of coaches, players, people's personalities. And some of these guys are just better being X's and O's guys. It's nothing against them personally. It's just, that's what they're good at.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. 1000%. guys like Lovie Smith are just made to be defensive coordinators, not head coaches. There's offensive players, offensive coaches. Like they're trying to get like Ryan, what's the Northwestern old head coach? Was it Ryan Fitzpatrick or Ryan? Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald. Yes, I was going to say your Fitz is. I was like, you're on the right track. I'm like, what am I thinking? Yes, Fitzgerald.
They're trying to get like Fitzgerald. I'm hearing all these names being thrown around for guys to be head coaches. The Bears are in a situation now where they need professionals now. They got a good team. They got a good young defense, good receivers. They've drafted pretty well. They got a couple nice draft picks coming up. JT, what you just rolled out as a thought for the Bears, have an established head coach and have professional coordinators to do coordinator things on the offensive side of the ball and surround themselves with their guys to run their way they want to be and everybody be on the same page with what the Bears need. They don't need to start from scratch and get some, young upcoming hire that, has never proved himself before to fail again, especially when you got Caleb Williams. You can't mess this up now. You cannot mess this up. So, all right. So now we took 4 to 7.5 minutes to do the first.
I knew I was going to take the long first one. That's why I was like, get the first one out of the way. Why I'm going to rant on that one, and then I'll be quick on the other one.
It's always tough to not do the Bears. Like, you got to go on it. But anyway, Jeff, if I told you the Bengals were not even going to make the playoffs this year before the season started, would you have believed me?
No. Does that help? No, I wouldn't. I would not have believed you. I mean, again, the Bengals have had their struggles, and it's been amazing how sometimes they hit these cold streaks. But I definitely would not have expected what we're seeing here. And I thought I wasn't expecting anything out of Pittsburgh. I really thought it would have been the Bengals and the Ravens vying for that division. So yeah, this is not something I would have expected. I wouldn't have expected some of the struggles they've had on defense.
Right.
I actually had the Bengals missing the playoffs this year. I was one of the rare people. I didn't think they'd be as bad as they are, but I looked at their schedule and their defense, and I was worried that they would be right around 500 and missing a tiebreaker. This is kind of what I said preseason, just because that division's so tough, and just the schedule they had to play. I was like, man, I can see this team being like 8-9 or 9-8, missing the playoffs on a tiebreaker. I did not think they would be as bad as they have been, but I did think they would miss the playoffs just because how tough the AFC is this year.
JT, Bills, Josh Allen for MVP. Is the MVP voting even close at this point?
I tell you what, I think he's way out ahead right now. I know the Chiefs are undefeated, and that always makes everybody want to vote for Mahomes, but you can't statistically look at him this year and be like, oh, he's the MVP. Like, he's done well, and their defense has been better, but I think it's got to be Josh Allen. I think the only other guy that's right there in the mix is got to be Jared Goff. For the Lions. I mean, being 11-1, I think teams are going to. I was shocked the other day whenever I heard a couple guys on a couple analysts that are like, oh, Saquon Barkley MVP. I was like, oh, now we're going to talk about running backs. I was like, after last year when I was yelling at the top of the mountain all year for CMC to be MVP and he wasn't, people were like, oh no, he's offensive player of the year. I'm like, oh, now a running back can be MVP. I'm like, okay. I was like, that's ridiculous. But I think it's Allen. I think Allen won. Goff too, and I also think the fact that most people are probably pulling for both those teams to make the Super Bowl also helps in the cause for both those guys in the MVP voting.
Yeah, I'm getting Saquon, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, all kind of candidates in there, and they all could. Voting is weird. You see with the college right now with Shadur and Judkins, but you never know what's going to happen. That's why they vote. That's why they throw all these names in the hat. So. Where are we at now? Jeff, Broncos. Will Audric Estime ever get a significant playing time, or is he just a slow early down plotter?
I think, again, his snap share had increased through week 10. I know that it dropped off again. It's not like the Knicks have started throwing the ball a lot more, but I think when you look, his yardage has increased. So, I mean, perhaps drives have been sustained more through the air. And I mean, Javonte Williams is still there. A lot's going to really depend on whether or not, how long Williams sticks around. They still are not using Estime whatsoever in the passing game. I think he's only had one game where he's had a target. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I was looking at that the other day, and he still only has like one game with a target. And I don't understand why they're not using him a little more. I think we talked about this in one of the other times I was on the show, is the fact that Estime has had some experience catching the ball out of the backfield. So I don't know why they're not using him. Maybe it's just because, everything is funneling through Sutton. Thank you very much, Sutton, yesterday for another loss. But I was playing against him in a couple leagues, but I don't know. For me, it's too hard to say. This year you're not going to see it. Next year, we'll see what happens when Sean Payton switches things around.
He's still only 21 years old, so there's time to go with that. But man, I just traded real quick on some of these trades. I traded away Audric Estime, Bryce Young, and a 2026 third round pick for a team that's in playoff contention right now. Next year probably should be also. I got back Jameis Winston, David Njoku for that and Pat Freiermuth, all in a 0.75 tight end premium league. So I got Winston, Njoku, and Freiermuth for Estime, Bryce Young in a probably late third. So I smash it. You send me stupid ass fucking trades out, man, and sometimes people just take them, and I'm like, yes, this is great. I was super happy with that. I like Bryce Young. He's been kind of picking up the slack a little bit lately, but it's a kind of 2-week sample size that he's been. And he's still just throwing like 189 yards and 1 touchdown. He's not. I think Jameis Winston has these boom bust weeks. So like yesterday, 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'd rather take that in a heartbeat than just the slow and steady possible starting, maybe possibly more of a better NFL player than a fantasy player for sure, though. But I'm playing fantasy football. Those are the trades I like to make, so it is what it is. But JT Browns. Will Jameis Winston's interceptions be the only reason he can't find a long-term home, or is he sticking with the Browns for a while?
I'm not sure if it's the only reason he's not going to find a long-term home. I have a feeling he's been in the league too long. I think too many people have talked about him. I think people like him. He's a good story to come in as the backup and sling it. I just don't know if any GM or coach is going to put their job on the line backing Jameis is my worry. I just don't think anybody's going to do it. I don't think anybody's going to be like, son, he threw the picks last night, and that's always been the big knock on him is the turnovers. But let's be honest, he was trying to make every play. He was out there doing everything he could to try to will them to a win. So I think sometimes in those situations, people want to knock those guys for the turnovers, but you're like, man, when you're trying to do everything, and then you turn around and look at a guy that's, going 16 of 20 for 180 yards and a touchdown and a pick, and they win, and everyone's like, oh, he had a great game. And you're like, did he really have a great game? Or was he just lucky that his whole team held it together for him? He didn't have to do much. So I like Jameis. Obviously this Brown situation, we've already talked about it quite a bit this year, is going to be a disaster. I don't know what they're going to do here in the offseason with Watson. At this point, they're looking like they're almost going to be locked into a top 5 pick. If so, do you go quarterback? And if you do, I don't think there's anyone's going to take on Winston or Watson's salary. So you're basically just going to have to eat that. So, they've got a lot of decisions to make out there. I think people are going to want Jameis. I think people want Jameis as a backup. I just don't know if anyone wants him as a clear cut. We're bringing you in and you're a starter moving forward this year. That's my worry. Like you said, I think he's a great fantasy player. I love him for that reason. I just don't know that I see a team getting behind him all season, just bringing him in and saying, yes, you're our guy. I just don't see it. I wish it would happen. I really do. I like Jameis. The Browns are much more watchable and fun with him on the field, I have to be honest with you, but I'm just not sure it happens.
I put out a tweet last night saying Jameis would go back for LASIK because they missed that one corner of his eye in the flat where he tries to hit the guy. You can't see in the one spot, and it's like you got a blind spot in your car. You can't. He threw all his interceptions right in the same spot last night. I think he just can't see that side of the field.
He was throwing a couple of those deep outside long across his body throws that he was just trying to do it all arm. But I tell you what, the one thing I did notice last night with Jameis, and I know this drives me crazy because the Steelers and Colts never do it, so that's why I always notice it. Every time they needed a play, they just ran a slant, and he just gunned it in.
Yeah.
He just gunned it into the window and made the play on a slant. I'm like, why can't the Steelers and the Colts ever do that? They can't ever run a 5-yard slant on a crucial 3rd and 3. They can't ever get it. they run a 1 yard bubble screen and lose 2 yards. It happens every time. It drives me nuts. But I was like, oh, I guess when you have a quarterback that has a cannon and can actually get the ball in there, you can run those a little more often. So I was impressed by that. And also, did he throw the picks? Yes. But man, look what he's doing with that wide receiver core. I mean, he made Jerry Jeudy look like a freaking champion last night. And I mean, he made Jerry Jeudy look like the guy that we kind of thought we were getting when he came out as a rookie. When he came out of Alabama, we thought that was the Jerry Jeudy we were getting. And he's obviously been a huge bust in the NFL up until recently. But man, I mean, he's taking a bunch of guys that nobody wanted, and he's actually producing, which is pretty amazing. So
many of these quarterbacks are underthrowing their guys and letting their guys have to go up and like make the plays for them. James is hitting guys in stride. The ball falls right into their hands like a bar of soap into a pillow, and they're running full stride. I mean, he's got it. I don't know if he ever cleans up those stupid interceptions. I'm not sure what it is or why he can't do that, but man, he's so close.
He's trying to do too much, but that's been Jameis's whole career. He's been trying to do too much. I mean, that's just kind of who he is. I mean, like you said, I mean, look at the game he had in the stats last night against what statistically was the number 2 defense in the league against the pass. So, I mean, he absolutely lit it up against a team that's been really good on defense this year. And he missed Jeudy on another 50-yarder that he just overthrew him. That would have been another huge touchdown. So I tell you what, at least if you're a Browns fan, you're out there and you're going, hey, at least these games are fun to watch now. Even if we're not winning them all, they're fun because they were pretty awful the first half of the season, man. They were one of the worst teams to watch. It was brutal.
Yeah, if that defense can step up a little bit and stop people from scoring points, I mean, Jameis is killing it. So have at it. Jeff, Buccaneers. Bucky Irving looked really sore after last week's win. Is he too small to be a workhorse in the NFL?
I mean, he's small. I mean, you think AJ, when you're thinking about him, the fact that they gave him mid 20 carries last week, that's just too much. I don't think that's sustainable. I think, again, as a complimentary back, I will say this, I was on the Rachaad White train and still believed that Rachaad White was going to be the dominant back here. But with Irving, Irving's had 3 solid games. I mean, for fantasy, it's great. I just don't know how sustainable it is with his size. So I don't know what Tampa's intending to do for the future weeks, but I don't think they can be doing that with his frame.
Right. JT, Cardinals. Why the hell did Arizona sign James Conner to extension when they know I drafted Trey Benson in almost all my leagues?
If you didn't draft Trey Benson, I drafted Trey Benson. So I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, this is like the Chuba Hubbard situation all over again. These guys, like, all these teams go out and draft like these running backs that you think are going to take over, and all of a sudden they sign the old guy. They got the 2 more years. You're like, what is happening here? James Conner's been really good. There's no reason to think he's slowing down because he hasn't looked like he's slowing down. He's had his 2 best years of his career the last 2 years. So I can see why they want him back, but man, it does hurt for fantasy purposes. It definitely hurts Trey Benson. You're like, you kind of thought he might take over at the end of this year once Conner got banged up, because it seems like he does every year, and so far it hasn't happened. So if you got Conner, congratulations. If you got Benson, that sucks. I traded Conner away in another league earlier this year, and now I have 0 starting running backs after the CMC injury. I'm starting Jaylen Warren and Sean Tucker this week. That's where I'm at. So I'm really, really kicking myself for that Conner trade, as he's looked great this year.
It's nice that I only have Brooks and Benson and all the teams that I'm rebuilding on. So this year they're not doing too much, but I know that in the future, those guys will be the future for these teams by middle of next year or something like that. And it's nice they're not scoring points right now. So this is pretty good. I'm actually happy about the scenario. I wish they'd kind of show a little bit more. Those guys look pretty good when they're out there. So they look like they're in the small increments, but they got good
we've
running
seen
backs
it, John. We've
them.
Seen guys not hit till the end of the rookie year or barely do anything rookie year. And then, early part of the second year or mid-year second year, they start blowing up. So, again, I think sometimes we just assume all these guys are going to hit right off the bat, and it's just not. That's not going to be the case.
Right. All right. Jeff, Chargers. Is Ladd McConkey the real rookie of the year?
He has certainly been one bright spot on the Chargers. Chargers offense, which has really been important given the defense has not played as well as of late, at least not relative to what they were doing earlier in the season. I think he should be considered. However, I mean, obviously a case could also be made for Brock Bowers. I think in the end, it's probably still going to go to either Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix, depending on how the last 5 weeks of the season goes. Jaden Daniels had a little bit of a lull there for, a while. And as he went, so did the Commanders. But I think it's still going to be one of those two, but most definitely McConkey's performance would warrant consideration.
Yeah. Brandon Hallam, Nico Collins didn't blow up till you were 3. Yes, I didn't own Nico Collins anywhere, so I didn't see I didn't see him coming out like he did. Like he blew up like he did, the same as like the sun god kind of like blow up kind of thing. But hey, that happens. But for running backs, I think people just expect running backs to hit the field running, like just drop them in there and they just go and blah blah blah. And it's it's not always like that. Receivers take a little bit longer to kind of produce. Unlike we get spoiled with the Jeffersons and Chases and stuff like that. But I'm like I said, I'm kind of happy because the guys I drafted are in leagues that I don't need to win right now. So, Chiefs. Noah Gray is the heir apparent to Kelsey, or is it just a messy offense, JT?
I don't know if he's the heir apparent. He's 4 years in, former 5th round pick out of Duke. I think he can make some room for himself in the league here. But honestly, he's got 4 catches is the most he's got in a game this year. He's had 4 catches and 4 straight. If it wasn't for the 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games, I'm not sure we're saying this. I think the touchdowns make it look a lot better. But I mean, every time I think he catches a touchdown, I'm like, oh man, look at him. Then I'm like, oh, then Justin Watson catches a touchdown. And you're like, oh, it's just Mahomes hitting everyone and anyone. So, well, I think Gray's been a nice upside. I'm not buying that he's like this long-term solution that's all of a sudden going to become Travis Kelce in the next couple of seasons. I think he's solid. I think he's got a chance to actually grow and develop a little bit there. But I'm not sold yet on that. Like all of a sudden he's going to be the man just because he got a couple TDs the last couple of weeks. As we've seen, Mahomes made Juju look great. 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, and he's done nothing since then. So I think it's always tough when you have Mahomes, just a guy that knows the offense, can find the open guy. A lot of times, I used to say this all the time, how many times did Peyton Manning make some 3rd, 4th string, super small white dude wide receiver look really good and like he would be a good NFL player, and you realize, oh, it's just Manning.
Yeah,
finding anyone and everyone open and making plays. So I think sometimes we get a little we see some of these good stats and we're like, oh, maybe this guy's gonna be the man. You're like, is it him, or is it really just they got a really good QB that keeps finding guys open because they're guarding everyone else? So
okay, real fast.
I'm not totally in on Gray yet. I'm just not totally in on him yet. I think he's a solid player, but he's not a guy I'm going to start going out and acquiring $1 million of, thinking that he's the next Travis Kelce.
All right, both of you guys, start with JT real fast. What are you doing with Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy? Are you getting rid of these guys? Are you trying to import them? Are you like getting rid of one or the other? Are they both going to be somewhat fantasy producers? Are they both just sells right now kind of thing? Like, I mean, Rice is a buy low, and it's probably so is Xavier Worthy. He's not doing shit. So what do you think?
Yeah, if you could go get Rice low, I had him in a couple spots. I bought him in a couple spots earlier in the year where people kind of were like nervous about him and getting rid of him, and I got him for a decent price. A lot of places I already had him, I didn't sell him because I just didn't feel like I was going to get a good enough value back in return for him. Worthy, if you really like Worthy, now is probably the time to try to buy him. They're a little disappointed in the breakout, and I think people are also seeing, oh, it is just the Chiefs kind of just go with whoever's there. I mean, right now, if you look at the stats on the year, Kelce, who people, kind of ripped on, like, he's kind of old, he's not as good. He leads the team, 75 catches, 600 yards, but only has 2 touchdowns. Worthy's actually second on the team with 33 catches for 407 yards and 4 touchdowns, which is kind of surprising because you feel like he's gone most weeks. He doesn't even do anything. And Gray, who you just brought up, is third on the team in catches with 31 for 373 and 4 touchdowns. Then you get 26 for DeAndre Hopkins, 24 for Rice, 19 for Watson. So again, he's just kind of mixing everybody in. So to me, I don't know if I'm going out and really acquiring those guys because I'm nervous that there is no gonna be the man he's just going to keep spraying the ball around to a bunch of big people the rest of his career now that he's kind of figured it all out. And he doesn't have to lean on the Kelseys and the Tyreek Hills like he did earlier in his career. I'm worried that they're ever going to have like a clear-cut number one top-end receiver again, just statistically wise.
Tyreek Hill was special with that team, so yeah. Jeff, like buy or sell on Xavier Worthy, and if so, what's the buying, what's the selling price?
I'm probably doing neither. I'm definitely not going to go out and buy. I mean, it'd have to be a really low price. If I have a deep enough roster, I'm just stashing them and waiting to see what happens. If I really need to, if I really need the roster spot in a more shallow roster, then perhaps I'll try to move them. But I'm not going to get I'm not going to get back for those players what I'd like to see. So I might as well just take the gamble and see what happens in the future. I'm not really going to, I mean, if somebody wanted to, if I could literally slide in a 4th or 5th round and get one of those guys, I might consider it. But again, I play with a lot of GMs who they just hold out and they want the highest price. And so I think everybody's going to be asking too much. And I haven't made a move, and I haven't really seen too many moves in any of my leagues. I think I saw one Rice that was bundled in a transaction, so it's hard to, to break that apart and really see what his value was in that trade. So I'm neither buying or selling at this point.
A 4th round for Rashee Rice?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If I can get him for a 4th round, I'll take it.
Of course you.
He's like, of course I'm taking it. Of course I'm taking it. What are you talking about?
Yeah. That'd be great. If I might send some 4th round just as a joke and see maybe if somebody would accept that. That would be great. I think the least you're getting away with is a mid-second, probably late second.
I heard your quarterback trades. I thought I could slide something.
He's like, might as well try it. Hey, Johnny would throw that trade offer out. He would never hesitate to throw that trade offer out.
I have no shame when it comes. There's no shame in my game when it comes to sending out bad trades. Absolutely not. Where are we at now? Sure. Oh, we're at the Colts, right? Did I miss the Chargers? Oh no, I already did.
No, the Colts.
Jeff, Colts. Jonathan Taylor has only had 4 bad games. Why is everybody panicking on this guy?
If anyone in my league is panicking, please contact me, and I'll be more than happy to take him off your hands. I don't really understand it. I mean, probably the yards per carry may be one concern. I mean, he's always been kind of up and down, and he's not getting those big, huge home run games that he's had. And I know everybody's looking for that. That's not what I'm necessarily looking for in a running back. I know that AR, his running game, that's going to take away some of the carries for Taylor, but I don't quite understand it. He's still solid. I don't know where he ranks amongst running backs, to be honest with you, but like you said, he's had 4 bad games. He's been solid. You're not always going to get those home runs, and I think that's what people expect.
Yeah. All right, we got a question here from Cam Daddy. Drop Javonte Williams, 10-man, half PPR redraft league, have Henry Gibbs and Garendo. I'm expecting a lot from Garendo just because, that guy flashes. It's like having Devin Achane on the field. They have a bigger version of Devin Achane on the field. So I think I've traded away Javonte before the season started in a bunch of leagues anyway, so I don't have him anywhere. But, I mean, depending how big these rosters are, I would have no problem dropping Javonte. I mean, just look at last night's game. What did he have? Like four or 5 carries. He walked into a touchdown that you could drive a Mack truck through the hole. It's not like he worked for that touchdown at all. And he gets stopped in 1 yard line, his other carries. So I'd probably drop Javonte, and especially the half PPR. You're not making up any ground in the half PPR with a running back that only catches a couple passes a game if he's lucky. Right. So I probably would. JT?
Yeah, I'm holding it unless I need the spot. I mean, if I'm like, hey, I really need to pick up a spot, it's bye week hell. I need to play somebody, and Javonte's one of your guys because the Broncos are on a bye, and you're like, hey, I gotta drop a guy in order to like fill a lineup. Then I would drop Javonte to fill a lineup spot if that's what you got to do. I'm not dropping him just to drop him, but if you're like you're sitting there and which is what I'm guessing what you're asking Cam Daddy here is like, I gotta drop somebody because I gotta pick up a spot. Then I would. I don't know. Make that move if I had to.
I would never drop anybody. Just drop anybody. I fill up
I
mean, IR spots.
I hold on to everybody unless it's like I'm forced to make a move. So I would probably hold there. And I was going to also say, Jeff, JT right now is 13th in the league in rushing, 804 yards.
Yeah.
So, and he's only 80 yards behind Bijan. Joe Mixon, who everyone has absolutely raved about this year, he's 80 yards behind Joe Mixon on the year. So, again, I think it's just one of those. I think we get into this thing where people see the video game stats and the crazy stats, and they just expect this every week from every guy that if they don't get 110, 115 and 2 touches, people are like, oh, I'm out on him. And like, that's just not realistic NFL. Like, you're going to get games where guys get 65 yards, and no touchdowns. Like, it happens. It doesn't mean the guy's bad or he's playing bad. It's game script. It depends on what happens. So.
And it's not like it was a couple of years ago where you were drafting in 101, 102. I think he slid most boards, late round 1, early round 2. Is that about right? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
So I think that performance, you're getting the running back 13 out of a late 1 or early 2. I think that's fairly decent.
The problem is he scored like 10 points a game. He scored like 8 points a game, 7 points a game. And I think he had like 3 points last week. And you're like, man, these bomb weeks when you lose by 4 points because Jonathan Taylor only scored 4 points, shit like that pisses you off. You're expecting more on a regular basis from guys like JT. So, I
think the touchdowns is the difference. I think if you looked at his stats right now and you gave him 3 more touchdowns or 4 more touchdowns, I think people would be like looking at him completely different. He only had 5 touchdowns. I mean, he's still averaging 4.3 a carry, so it's not great because his career average is a lot higher than that, but that's still solid. It's just the 5 TDs is kind of what burns you. I mean, it really, I mean, if you give him 8 or 9 TDs, he's top 4 in the league, 5 in the league. And then people are like, oh, okay. And they feel better about it. And it's, again, they of course he is going to lose some of those TDs to AR, but then some of that is because they get down there and they run these delay like RPOs on the 1 yard line. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then they wonder why they lose 2 yards. You're like, you can't run a delayed handoff where he's looking for the hole on the 1 yard line. There is no freaking hole. There's not gonna be a hole. You got to just run a play straight ahead. So that drives me bonkers week to week. And if they would, if they would stop doing that, because he's actually got power, he could get in. It's just that to me is really, really annoying. He easily should have 4 more TDs this year. I mean, easily, like 1 yard touchdowns where he did not get in.
Yeah. JT, Cowboys. Are the Cowboys better without Dak?
I don't think they're better without Dak. No, I just, I think it's, again, we look at these things, it's like once you have 0 expectations and then the team plays pretty good, you're like, oh, well, it's not that they're all of a sudden that much better. You just now have 0 expectations. Where before you're like, oh, it's Dak, we got to win the Super Bowl or bust. And then when you don't play well, everybody's like, oh, you're horrible. It's just the way people are looking at it. Dak is way better than Cooper Rush. Let's just be honest. He's way better than Cooper Rush. There's no way this is even a debate. Like, the Cowboys are just a mess. They put him in a bad position. They put the whole team in a bad position this year. They were one of the teams this offseason. I was like, this team is absolutely not making the playoffs. I'm like, they are overrated. Their defense is not good. They have no running game. I'm like, you're going to need Dak to throw for 5,000 and CeeDee Lamb to have like 180 catches and 2,000 yards for them to win this year. And they just put way too much on those 2 guys alone.
Yeah. Jeff, Dolphins. Is Tyreek Hill being phased out of this offense on purpose?
I saw this question. I was curious. I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, I'm not certain we can say that he is being phased. That wouldn't be surprising. He's a free agent next year. Yes or no? I can't.
He just signed a long-term contract. But I'm not sure how much of it is cuttable.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I'm not gonna say long-term. I think it's like a 2-year extension or something like that. But I'm not sure how much of it's cuttable.
Okay. He's not getting the targets he did last year. I mean, there were some games where he was pulling, double-digit targets week after week. So he's certainly not getting that. I know that they've got some, a couple of younger guys that they're putting out there. I don't know if it's intentional. The Dolphins always seem to be, they've been a mess. So I don't know that it's on purpose. He is 30 years old. So, but again, if they've just extended him for 2 years, not certain when you can actually move on from that. I think it may be just a matter of game script, or it may be a matter that the head coach was freezing wherever he was last week.
Yeah. Tyreek Hill.
I just looked it up. He signed a 4-year, $120 million extension in 2022. So he's technically right now with the Dolphins till the end of 2026 season. So that would be 2 more years after this year.
Okay.
So his guaranteed salary is 19, but pre June 1st cap hit 87.55. So yeah, okay,
he gets $10 million next year and $29.9 million base in 2026. They backloaded his contract, which will be interesting to see what they can get out of that, because obviously they get backloaded that big time. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually get out of that and cut him without eating a ton of space on that. I would have to do a little more research on that if I was going to go deep into that before we talked about it.
He had enough fucking balls to go out there and say that he, like, maybe the police handcuffing him was the reason that's causing him to have this stress. Like, dude, shit like that just makes me want to not watch the fucking football anymore. When people say shit like that, so I don't know. That's just me. It's disgusting, but anyway, Eagles. Was Saquon the best offseason signing for any team?
I think it was a great signing. I mean, I have Saquon in a ton of leagues, and people are just like, "Why are you taking him this early?" I'm like, dude, Saquon is no joke. He's legit, and I was like, he's been in an awful team with no offensive line for years. I'm like, can you imagine this guy on a good team with an actual good team and a good offensive line? And guess what? We're seeing it. He's freaking badass. I mean, Saquon looks freaking great. I mean, when you look at, like, what has Miles Sanders done since he left the Eagles? Nothing. He ran for over 1,000 yards and like double-digit touchdowns this last year with the Eagles. Look at DeAndre Swift. He's actually been good for the Bears this year, which I've been delightfully surprised about. But I mean, Saquon was going to be awesome on this team. All my teams that are rocking and rolling right now are getting carried by the old guys. Saquon and Derrick Henry have been crushing it for me. So pumped to have those guys on quite a few different teams, but Saquon's been great. You could see, we always get that 28-year-old kind of like drop off is what we look at on running backs. I don't think we're getting that with him. He looks sprite. He looks ready to roll. I mean, he looks like he's damn near a rookie this year. I mean, he looks like he is ready to move. I think we've got quite a few good years left of Saquon here. So if you got him in a dynasty, congratulations. And if you got him in redraft, good for you, but it's going to be harder to get him next year. That's for sure.
I got Saquon this year for my first, which I only lost one game so far. I already have I just secured the first round bye. So that'll be a late first. 2 seconds, a 25, my 25 second, and somebody else who's in playoff contention second. 2/3, a fourth, and Zamir White. So I just threw a bunch of shit in the fucking against the wall, and hopefully it stuck. So I was pretty happy with that haul for Saquon Barkley. And a team that's already winning, it was him and Chase Brown on my running backs. And I don't know, Chase Brown is overachieving too. I got pretty lucky with that one. I knew he was good, but he's been playing pretty damn well lately.
My boy Chase. Chase has been great, man. I love to see it. I said, just get him in there. Get that Zach Moss guy out of the way. What happens? As soon as Moss gets out of the way, Chase Brown takes off. Shocker.
Yeah. Jeff, Falcons. I traded for Kyle Pitts after his week 4 goose egg when somebody was sick of having him. I mean, he has a long career ahead of him and can always right the ship. Or did I just inherit a headache?
I don't know. I have many shares of Pitts, and I'm considering it a headache. I really thought Cousins was going to be great for him, and that hasn't really transpired. I saw a little bit of the game last week when it looked like at times Kyle Pitts couldn't get open. I don't know if it was miscommunication, if it was poor route running, but it seemed like times that Kyle Pitts was running a route and he was getting stymied. So I don't know. I thought for sure there was going to be a change. Now I don't know next year if Cousins returns next year. I mean, he signed that contract. I'm assuming he's coming back. Will Cousins start? I mean, I looked at the way Cousins used Hawkinson, and I'm not in any way saying Pitts and Hawkinson are the same player. I just thought we would see more out of Pitts, and it just hasn't transpired. So for me, I'm probably looking to move him at the end of this year because I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just keep holding on to him. I mean, I know he's not getting the separation that is expected from but I don't hold on to him because he's so young. I think I'm gonna give him a couple more years to develop, maybe learn some better route running, something. I don't know, but he can't get. I'm not gonna say he can't get any worse because he's had a couple pretty decent games this year, but he can't be so inconsistent, I guess is the correct word for it. JT, 49ers. Can Isaac Guerrero carry the load for the 49ers going forward?
Can he carry the load completely? I don't know, but this team has been so run heavy. He's going to get every opportunity to get a lot of carries and do something. The biggest issue for him is he's never been a featured back. He just has always been a guy that split time in college, everywhere else. He's never been able to really take over the show. This is going to be a perfect opportunity to show that he can do that. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. I had a league where I had a ton of fab money left that I hadn't spent all this year, and I am like in a do or die win this week, and I spent everything I had picking him up. So I'm hoping he has a shot against the Bears here this week. I need him to do something. He's definitely, if he's out on waiver-wire, you need to go get him because he's going to be a guy that's going to get looks. He's going to get touches. There's no way the Niners just all of a sudden turn around and decide they're going to throw the ball 50 times a game out of nowhere. I just don't see it happening. I think Guerrero is going to get a pretty nice amount of carries. Now, what he does with them, we'll see. But we've shown he's explosive, man. The guy's fast and he's big. All he really needs is one breakout run a game, and he can have a nice fantasy night for you. So I like him. I'm giving him a run in quite a few leagues this week.
I just traded for a third round, probably mid to late third round pick, and I got Isaac Guerrero this morning. So
I think that's a great pick because if you were drafting him in the draft this last year, he was going mostly fourth round, like depending on how your league was. If you're in a little bit bigger league, possibly he went late third, but he was mostly going fourth round pick this year. So that's nice, John. I like that trade for sure. I would absolutely hammer Guerrero for a third.
Yeah, I was happy to get that. It's worth a shot. He's a big dude. He's good at pass blocking too. I mean, that's the thing. The other thing with that is a lot of these guys, when they're rookie season, they start out, they get the load the whole time, and they get burnt out towards the late of the season. Guerrero hasn't really carried the ball that much, so I don't think he's going to get burnt out. He may be able to just carry the load for the next 5 or 6 games, and they're not going to make the playoffs.
But there's no reason. It's not like the Niners are going to look at him like, oh, let's not take a chance with hurting him. It's not like he's a rookie quarterback. You know what I mean? So it's like they're gonna give him carries. They're gonna do stuff with him. It's not like he's like a first round wide receiver quarterback that they took and like, oh, we gotta like our season's maybe over. We need to do something here. But I tell you what, if anything, this shows you got to win when you have your window. I mean, did anybody see the Niners this happening this year? Man, if you would have asked me, who do you think is your guaranteed team to make the playoffs in the AFC and the NFC, I would have said the Chiefs and the Niners. Those would have been my 2 picks. I had the Niners in a bunch of playoff bets. Like, I'm like, oh, those are dead. So, I mean, it's crazy. You got to hit that window when you can. You can't worry about like year 2, 3, 4 down the line. It sucks because you don't want to say that as a GM and stuff. But I tell you what, you got to be like the Rams when they spent everything to win it and they won it. You got to, sometimes that's what you got to do because they are missing out right now. Those last 2 years that they had a chance to get it done and they didn't.
I'm in talks right now as we speak for Jameis Winston with a guy who just made the playoffs. And it's in babies and boomers, JT. It's Brian Watson. He's my division foe, first of all, and he wants Jameis Winston. He started off lowballing me for a third. He's like, all right, John, let's play ball. I said, let's. I know you want Lloyd, which I do like Lloyd. You know I want Winston. You know I need wide receivers. Let's fill in the blanks here. So as we talk, maybe something might come up during the show that a trade for Winston, but it's gonna be tough to pry Winston out of my grubby, greedy paws. So I'll keep you updated if something comes on.
I got a quick one, and I know I just keep getting these quick hits getting moving. Real fast. Are you guys trying to acquire CMC if some of your leagues offering them up on the trade block?
I think he's done.
Nope.
Because
I've been a CMC guy. Even when he was hurt, I was like, he's going to bounce back, have some big years. I was all over it. I was correct. I have to tell you, love CMC. I am nervous. I made a couple moves for him in the middle of the year when he was hurt on a couple teams, when somebody was trading him away. And now I'm like, I see people put him up, and usually I'm like the first guy that like, oh, let me make a trade offer. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to now. I'm nervous.
I tell you what scared me was that he went for that rehabilitation for the one side of his leg, and they said he's got the same problem in both his legs. And that to me leads to say, even if they do find some way or something to fix the one leg that's already messed up, right? I mean, this could be a problem forever. And I mean, he's a talented player, but when you cut somebody's legs off, man, when that's their game, it's not like he can even be a receiving back and be shifty, because he's a little powerhouse, man. He needs those legs to get through stuff to be shifty, and just slipping on the ice like that, or on the snow, especially this time of the season, the playoffs somewhere. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs anyway, but even for next year, he might be
I think he's going to be like one of the biggest controversies in the offseason is like, what do you do with CMC? Where do you draft him? Are you trading him or acquiring him? Because you're going to get people all over the place on this. I think it's going to be wild to see what people do with him this offseason.
Jeff?
I only had CMC in one Dynasty league. I assumed a team before last season, and I was involved in a 3-team trade and got Jefferson back. So I was and then of course CMC went off last year, but overall I was happy to get Jefferson in exchange for CMC, and I don't have him anywhere else, and I'm just fine with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Somebody just traded 3 firsts to get Travis Kelce and the CMC in the league I'm in, and you have to appreciate the when you're going for it, you got to make those kind of trades. But
I've got Derrick Henry and Kelce in a couple leagues that I'm like right on the verge of making the playoffs or missing it, and a bunch of teams are trying to get them from me, and I've been pushing hard for 2 firsts. I can't get anybody to give me 2 firsts. The best offer I got right now is a first and a second for those 2 guys.
Well,
and I was like, it's a 14-team league, and I'm just like, it's like, do I want to take the first and the second and just call it quits? Because if I sell those guys, I'm completely rebuilding this team that I have. But I'm like, I almost have no other picks. I've been trading picks. This has been one of those leagues that I've just been trading picks and trying to stay alive for year after year after year. So I've just been struggling. And so now I'm like, if I get rid of those guys, I really need to bail and sell a couple more guys. And I don't know what I can get for anybody else. So now I'm like, I'm trying to decide if I should take the first and the second, or if I should just keep going with Henry and Kelce. And as one of the guys in one of my Discord said, if you can't get 2 firsts, I'm just going to run those guys into the ground. I'm going to keep them until they're out of the league. I was like, I might end up doing that.
A guy in my league had a bunch of, his team wasn't stacked, but he had a really, really, really good old, Derrick Henry's and, so he won the league and he came in second place. He's like, when you do that, you make 8 years worth of, if you win the league, it's 75% payout. That's just mine are. You're paying for yourself to play fantasy football for the next 8 years. So he played for 12 years. What he did is he won 12 years worth of money for fantasy football. He traded all his team away, like the 7 starters he had. And he got 2 and 3 firsts for everybody. He's got 9 of the first round picks next year's draft and 6 of the 2026 picks, plus a whole bunch of second and thirds for Rodgers and guys like that. You know what? He is going to be drafting. I mean, he's going to refill his team 2 and 3 times over from what he gave away. A bunch of old guys like CMC and Kelce and Devontae Adams and shit like that. He did it right, man. It was pretty nice. So
nice.
It's sweet. I'm in 2 leagues. One guy's got 11 of the 12 first round picks, and the last guy was being a complete stroke about giving him the pick. He doesn't want him to have all 12, but he's sending everything. So
people give it to him.
Yeah. So yeah, it is what it is.
That's great.
Okay. Giants, right? With Theo Johnson, Jeff. Giants with Theo Johnson moved to IR. Is it Greg Dulce's time in New York right now?
I don't think it's anybody's time in New York, but again, Theo Johnson was receiving, he was targeted 4 or 5 times a game. I think Dulcich is going to, take some of that. The quarterback situation though is different with Daniel Jones out. I think, and with the carousel at quarterback, I think Dulcich could have an opportunity to snag a couple additional targets or a couple additional receptions. I just don't know if, again, if it's somebody you need, if it's a tight end premium, possibly. If it's something where you need a tight end on your bench, I would go for him. Or if you've got injuries at tight end, I'm not expecting big things from him. Everybody thought he was going to be the next coming when he was in Denver. That didn't transpire. I'm not expecting a lot. Again, if you're looking for 3, 4, 5, receptions, especially in a TEP, absolutely. But outside of that, I think it's going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty mid.
Yeah, I like Dulcich. I'm just kind of wish casting for my guy. So,
yeah.
JT Jaguars. Is it time to start? Is it time to shelf Trevor Lawrence for the rest of the season? You have nothing to gain by starting him. So what's the point of even?
I'm always like, I hate doing that. But at this point, after he took that hit last week and he was already fighting through to come back in injuries, if I'm Jacksonville, man, I want this guy healthy.
Yeah.
There's what do we think? 90% chance they have a new coaching staff next year, probably. I want to get, I want to get him healthy. I want a new coaching staff. I want him to go in the offseason feeling good, ready to go, ready to work with a new staff. I don't want him hobbling in the offseason. He got the crap kicked out of him last year, and he's been beat up pretty bad this year. So it's tough because I know these guys are fighters. They want to play. After he took the hit last week, I would definitely be going, okay, I'm sitting him at least a week, maybe 2, and then kind of seeing where we're at that point. You don't want to tank just to tank, as we've seen these teams don't want to do that, especially these guys that are going to lose their jobs. But I want a healthy T-Law. It hurts me in a lot of leagues because I need to play him, but I would probably sit him unless he's just fighting you tooth and nail to play, and he's like, Jaguars, I gotta play.
Jaguars are 2-10. What's the point of bringing him back in 2 weeks?
I agree. I don't think you should, especially. Here's my thing: if they were already kind of questioning it a little bit, like they just got the wide open side, like, okay, he just got the crap knocked out of him on a crazy hit. Now is the perfect chance to not play. Hey, if we were talking about Tua, we'd be talking about retirement right now, right? If that was Tua that took the hit, people would be like, oh, he's got to retire. It's over. So, like, to have T-Law sit for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, to me, it doesn't seem crazy. I think it's a perfect opportunity for them to sit him and just be like, hey, we want to make sure he's healthy and there's nothing long-term wrong. And then they don't look like the bad guys. They look like the good guys for sitting him because you're like, oh, we're worried about his health, even if they're not. I think it's the thing to do.
Chris Joel Smith, friend of the show, regular contributor to the waiver, to the comment section. Woo! I appreciate the woos.
I think he was wooing one of your trades earlier, John. I think he liked it.
Everybody likes my trades, JT, because they're awesome trades.
That's the way it works.
Okay, Jeff, Jets. What's the odds Aaron Rodgers comebacks next season to the Jets?
This is deja vu. It feels like Aaron Rodgers again. At this season, I think if he would have, we kind of talked before, if he would have come closer to a championship or closer to a playoff possibility, perhaps he doesn't look like the old Aaron Rodgers. He's the team just looks discombobulated. There are flashes where they look good, but overall it just doesn't seem to be solid. He tries to hook up with some of his guys that he's got. Devontae Adams had a couple really good receptions in the game last week. I don't know. The guy is mysterious. Everybody knows that, nobody knows what's going on in his head at any given time. I just think that I don't know how the team is going to improve much next year versus this year based on the weapons he has and for them to actually make a push. So I would say he doesn't, especially when he's on the podium. I think I read a headline where he was, basically he was getting heat as a quarterback and he's kind of just, he wanted to pass along all the blame to everybody else as well, whether rightful or not. But I'm mumbling here about this. I don't think he does, but who really knows?
All right. So does he come back anywhere in the NFL? And it's, I mean, that's one more question. Did he come back anywhere? You see him retread like one more year, or people are like, hey man, this guy's just a cancer in the locker room because he's such a piece of shit?
I mean, which team in the NFL is willing to, bring over all of the receivers, clear the roster for his litany of receivers? He might. I mean, what teams are, again, going back, who would you rather have as a team, Aaron Rodgers or Jameis Winston? Rodgers, he's a champion, but is he the same Rodgers? I don't know. I mean, obviously the answer is you'd want Rodgers, but where's he going to go? I don't. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know how to answer this question.
I'm with you, Jeff. I'm just looking through the rosters and I'm looking at teams and like where the only way he's going to go somewhere is it's a team that's a favorite to win the title, and who that's going to be a favorite is going to take him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. Nobody right now that's in the mix this year that will probably be in the mix next year needs a QB. They all are set at quarterback. That's why they're winning.
Yep.
So man, I just don't see it. I really don't. Yeah. I mean, maybe something changes the offense. Somebody gets traded. We see something with the draft picks. But I just don't see a team that could make the swing next year in a 1-year swing to be in it where Aaron Rodgers is your guy. Like his best opportunity would go to a team that has a veteran and he's the backup. And then if they get hurt, he could lead the team to championship, but he ain't going to do that. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to go anywhere and be anyone's backup. There's no way. So I just can't, I cannot see any scenario. I mean, the only team I could see him going to, and this is like way out there, the only team I can see going is like somewhere like Atlanta, where if Cousins gets hurt and is like out for the year or something, and they're not sure about Penix and they still think they can compete in a pretty weak South, then that just like glancing over it, that's really the only place I could see the possibility. I mean, it's there in Minnesota, but at Minnesota, if you're not going to go with JJ, are you really not going to re-sign Darnold instead of sign Aaron Rodgers?
All right. So next season, let's say,
you know what I'm saying? Like that, like where else? Those are like the only two spots I could even see him, even a roadmap of him somehow ending up there. But even then, I don't think it makes a lot of sense.
No. Next year, preseason, Kyler Murray gets hurt. How would he fit in Arizona?
I could see Arizona making that move because I think Arizona thinks that they can compete in that division, and I loved my Clayton Tune for that short period of time where he was in there, but I don't think they're turning it over to Clayton Tune and thinking they're winning. So maybe, but that's where I'm at. I don't see anyone that would go and just go get him unless there was an injury. I mean, I feel like we're starting to get into Joe Flacco area where it's like, somebody gets hurt. Oh, we'd absolutely take you, Aaron, to come in and try to save our season. But like, we're getting to the point where I don't think teams are like, do we really want to spend that time of money and deal with who he is for a year unless we think we can win a championship? That's the toughie for me.
All right. This is kind of a Packers question, but it's because I'm a Packers player here. I make a lot of trades, and sometimes my trades aren't the best, but I do make a lot of moves. And these are kind of a team that I was just trying to get rid of points on my team for a lot of picks in the future. Jeff, Packers. I traded away Zay Flowers and Jaden Reed in the same league. Which one of these players is a bigger loss for me going in a dynasty league?
I mean, Zay Flowers is proven to be a little more consistent than Jaden Reed, where Jaden Reed is kind of the home run guy. So if you're looking for stability, you're kind of just looking for those points across week for week. I would think Zay Flowers is the guy that you lost. That was the biggest loss. If you were looking for someone to sit out there and have the potential to hit those home run games in Jaden Reed. I think the problem with Reed is, again, we've said this before, is the Packers have a loaded wide receiver room, and anybody could be the star any given week. Baltimore doesn't have the same weapons. I mean, they have a few, but I mean, not to the degree that the Packers do. So I love Jaden Reed. He's a Sparty, go green, but I would think people probably disagree with me. I would say Zay Flowers is the bigger loss.
JT?
Yeah, I think Flowers. For pretty much every reason that Jeff said. I like Reed a ton. He's a touchdown machine, but he's just not consistently going to get you a lot of targets week to week. He's a little bit of a hit or miss play, even though I like him as a player a ton. I think Zay Flowers, the situation with Lamar is a little bit better. As we've seen, it doesn't matter who they bring in Baltimore. No one else seems to get any kind of target share whatsoever outside of Flowers. I just think Flowers is the highest upside with just that offense and everything they're doing. I like Flowers just a bit more, though I love both those players.
JT, this is a guy I kind of like. I've been trading for a lot of leagues.
John, just so you know, we skipped the Lions. Do you want to let Jeff answer or do you want me
to? Jeff, I'll let you because you're the resident Lions fan. Sorry about that. I'll let you. You guys can both chime in. I'll ask JT first, and then Jeff, you could chime in. How can I tell when it's going to be a Jameson Williams or a Sam Laporta game?
This one, I have no idea. I've got Laporta on a bunch of teams, and every week I'm like looking at him in my lineup, like finger over. I'm like, do I play him? Do I not? Do I play him? Do I not? I don't know. Outside of St. Brown and the running backs, it's been tough for me to figure out when to play all these other guys. Obviously, I'm playing Monty and Gibbs and St. Brown every week, no matter what. But those guys have been a little harder to figure out. Jeff, what do you think? Yeah, obviously, a Lions fan, you watch a little more of them than I do. What are your thoughts on those two?
Well, as a Lions fan, I don't know that I can really make a guess, but from a looking at, I think the best thing is, determining what the defenses do, which defenses are more likely to give up. I think Jameson Williams, they've said that I'm drawing a blank now. As far as, which defense, I keep wanting to say it was covered too, but I don't even quote me on that. But, looking at the defense and trying to determine which defense, Jameson Williams can excel in. Obviously, he's got speed, but with his routes, he's been fairly decent against the zone. So, I mean, it's kind of difficult. But if you get him one-on-one in man, he's going to get open. And so I think looking at what the defensive scheme is of the other team is important. Laporta, a lot of times they were double teaming him. I think with Jameson Williams getting some more of the attention, he has opened up a little bit. But again, Laporta was so touchdown dependent last year. So this regression, it's not like Laporta's having an awful season. It's just everybody was expecting the same thing from last year, and that doesn't answer the question. I think you have to really look at defensive scheme to make that. I don't think you can just look, hey, James, today's flip a coin. It's going to be Williams. It's going to be Laporta. I think it really comes down to defensive scheme and who's giving up the biggest games against tight ends, who's giving who's giving up the biggest games against the X.
Even that, it's just like, even on like when it's deep, it's third and long and you're covering a deep defense, you got Jameson kind of tied up in the background, and then all of a sudden Laporta's open up in the middle. It's almost like play dependent at this point in time. It's gotten so micro, studied at where they're at or when they excel. So that's a tough one, man. It's kind of a mind boggler, and having, to start one or two of them in a flex is a tough decision on a weekly basis for sure. JT, Panthers, is Jalen Coker a player you want on your deep rosters, or should you trade him away after his next decent game?
I just think they're going to keep going wide out in the draft. I think they're going to keep loading up. So I think Coker's a nice story this year. I'm just not sure that he's going to be in the long-term plans in Carolina. If you can get something decent for him, I would move him. If not, he's worth holding and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I sent Miles Sanders away to get Jalen Coker in a full PPR league. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I don't give a shit about Miles Sanders on it. So
yeah, I think he's worth a hold. Like it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the offseason as far as signings, rookies. Obviously, already got rid of Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen. We'll see what his future looks like. But obviously, they got Xavier Legette last year, so they need help at wide receiver. I mean, they got to help Bryce Young somehow. So I would not be surprised if they go a lot of offensive guys in this next draft.
Yeah, Jeff, Patriots, are we going to find out that something was wrong with Ramondre Stevenson when the season's over with?
That's a good question. I know that he has I mean, every year I think he's kind of faded off during the second half of the season. That's been well discussed. I know this year, I mean, he's had early in the season, again, he had a couple, I think he had one or two 100-yard games, and he was, again, stronger early in the season. His yards per carry are just, are weak. He's getting the rushes. He's not capitalizing on them. And so is it that he wears out early in the season? I don't know whether he has an injury or not. That's a question. But this has kind of been his track record. I believe that's been his track record.
Yeah, it's tough because they just signed him a long-term contract. He's a good player, a good receiver. I don't understand why it's Antonio Gibson game every other week, or why is that Gibby getting the touchdowns, or that kind of stuff. I like Antonio Gibson, but it's just like the world's biggest cock block having both of them in the same team. So
I know I was thinking the same thing when I was watching the game. I was like, oh, okay. Now Antonio Gibson wants to step up. I think I dropped him in like 4 leagues because he had done nothing. And I was like needing guys in bye week fill-ins in a couple of rosters that weren't super long, like long benches. And I was just like, I hate to drop Gibson, but man, he's doing nothing for me. And then of course I drop him. I'm like, oh, there's number 4. There's number 4. There he is again. I'm like, oh, of course now he's getting all kinds of touches and looking good doing it.
Yeah, he had like 9 yards of carry and a touchdown in this game. I'm like, what the shit is Gibson doing? How is this happening? Like,
yeah, he looked pretty good, but the Colts have been a tough one. They've either looked really good against the run or really bad week to week. They can't seem to pull together.
Yes. We are at the Raiders. JT Raiders. Where will Michael Mayer be going next season? Because he is not very happy in this offense, man. He cannot coexist with this. He's not a guy to sit in back and block. He's a receiver.
I think he can coexist with Bowers. Now, I'm not sure what all the off the field stuff was personal, family things that had to miss all this time. Obviously, they've got to do something with him. I hope he comes back to the Raiders. I really think they could be a nice combo with him playing the inline and Bowers, kind of playing the slot for them, as we've seen. And I said this before he got drafted. I said, Bowers isn't a tight end. He is just an absolute ultimate football player. He is awesome. And he's proving that. He is badass. I think him and Mayer could be good. Mayer could be good on the same team. They just got to figure out how to use him. Again, only a second-year guy, didn't get a ton of playing time as a rookie. So I don't know if it's one of these, it's an issue with him and the coaching staff. Obviously, if it's the coaching staff problem, he's going to be gone. But I would like to see him stay there because I just think him and Bowers are different players, and I think they could actually be a real nice combination together, especially if the Raiders get Shedeur Sanders next year. I would love to see both those guys on the team.
All right. Jeff, Rams. As Tim George would say, people are saying, but people are worried about Blake Corum cutting into Kyron Williams' workload. Are you worried about that?
I potentially. I mean, the Rams have never. I mean, they've always been a pretty much a one-back team. They've never really been a platooning team or a back share team. So I don't know that Blake Corum will really get into Kyron Williams. I mean, Kyron Williams has been faring well. I think Corum is going to be someone who will eventually produce. But at what point will he cut into Kyron Williams? I'm not worried about it myself, but Sean McVay also is well known to suddenly flip the switch on a running back. He's proven that before. So I don't know I don't know. Won't say he's cutting into his workload. It might be just an absolute flip at a moment's notice.
Yeah. Yes. All right. JT, a couple more to go here, guys. Ravens. How did Lamar Jackson go from being MVP to being even better this season?
He's first off, I don't think he was MVP last year, but that was me personally. I think they gave it to him, even though we shouldn't have got it. I actually think he is having a better year this year than he had last year. Right. I tell you what, man, it seems like a while ago that Lamar was that guy you couldn't count on in fantasy because he was always going to get hurt and kill you at the end of the year in the playoffs. and he has just been an absolute beast the last couple of years. He's been phenomenal. I traded for him in a 1 QB league. I was struggling at QB, and another guy had Fields, Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. I got Lamar for Jerry Jeudy straight up. And I tell you what, It's the greatest trade I ever made in this league because he has been carrying my team ever since. Even with Jeudy having the monster game last night, I texted my cousin, who's my co-owner on that team, and I was like, still, that's the greatest trade we ever made, was getting Lamar for Jerry Jeudy straight up, because Lamar has absolutely carried us in that league. He's been phenomenal, man. And again, he's going to be those guys. It's like, I don't think he's going to be fully appreciated until he can figure out how to win and get to the Super Bowl. But he's just been great. I mean, really, the two teams he struggles with, or I guess the three, are the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Steelers. I mean, those are the three teams he just can't seem to get over the hump against. But he's just been phenomenal once again. And Derrick Henry has just made a huge difference for them this year. He's been awesome.
Yeah, he has been. I mean, that's exactly what the team needed. I'm not sure why they didn't go out and get Derrick Henry last season. They should have just spent. I mean, should have just dumped the Brinks truck over there and said, "Hey, what do you want? Picks, money, people. What does it take to get Derrick Henry there?" Because this offense, it just looks like this is what this offense is.
I mean, it looks like this is like where Derrick Henry is supposed to play his whole career. Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's just right at home, which I hate to say as a Ravens hater, but man, their offense looks scary. It looks good. Yeah, Lamar's been fantastic. The defense has been the one to let them down this year. Actually,
and who would have thought? Like that.
Their defense is the crazy thing is, you look across their roster and you're like, this is a loaded roster on defense. For some reason, they're just not getting it done. The secondary is struggling, even though they have a ton of talent back there. I'm not sure what's happening there.
Jeff, Saints, Taysom Hill being out makes Derek Carr's fantasy stock blank.
Blank is pretty good. I think that's a pretty good description. I don't think it really matters for the most part. Derek Carr's been playing most of the snaps. You've had Taysom Hill going, doing his usual, spell at quarterback, as well as out on the flat. I think I'm just not expecting much from Derek Carr, and Olave is still out, correct? Yep. So I'm just not expecting much from Derek Carr, and I don't think Taysom Hill being out really improves that at all. So, I mean, again, as you said at the beginning of the at the beginning of the cast, if you can trade him and get something for him, I'd certainly be moving him in a super flex league. I'm not, unless I really need him in a super flex. I don't have any interest in Carr.
Yeah, I think Juwan Johnson is who I've been kind of targeting lately for almost all of the trade targets. I'm getting denied a lot just because of the fact that I think he's going to be the major beneficiary. I would see besides Kamara, but I think he's the next man up, the number 2 probably receiver in this offense. So if you're in a tight end premium league, or even if not, I guess that's probably who I would go after. JT Seahawks. I'm sneakily grabbing AJ Barner in every league. Am I smarter just wish casting a guy I like?
I laugh because every time we bring up some of these tight ends like this, I'm like, you and me are always on the same page grabbing these tight ends. I'm grabbing AJ Barner all over the place, especially in deep leagues or tight end premium leagues. I'm just stashing him like I always do with a lot of these young tight ends and hope somebody breaks out. I really like what I've seen out of him this year. And as we've seen with other guys from that Michigan team last year, they just didn't throw the ball a ton. That didn't mean these guys aren't talented. He didn't have a bunch of catches, especially with Colston Loveland. Most people have as the 1, 2, or number 3 tight end coming out this year, being on Michigan's team last year. So I think Barner's good, man. We've been waiting for the Noah Fant forever and ever and ever, and I think Barner might end up being the guy there instead. I like him. I'm grabbing him in any league that I have room. If it's deep league and I can stash guys, I'm absolutely picking him up and stashing him.
There's so many people on this team. Like, either way, the tight end is probably the 5th option as far as receptions are concerned on this team. But man, I just like Barner just as the player himself. And I think the cream rises to the top sometimes with good players. And I think Barner is one of those players that I really like and I'd love to have on my team. So
He's looked good in the Seahawks games I've watched when he's got an opportunity to make plays, and it seems like the coaching staff likes him. I think they trust him, so I think more and more you're going to see him get more and more PT. And with a lot of these other guys getting traded and moving on, and then Noah Fant having some injury issues, it let Barner get on the field, and so far he's looked good when he's been out there. So,
yeah. Jeff, Steelers. So Russell Wilson wasn't as bad as the last coach made him out to be, right?
I agree with that. I again, the Denver situation was just odd from the beginning. Sean Payton coming in, trying to immediately lay down the law. I understand Russell, and his, what was it, his trainer or his guru, whatever the moniker was for his associate. I know that Payton didn't want him around, and so I mean, it immediately set a tone in Denver that just wasn't conducive to a collaborative relationship. I think going to Pittsburgh, I mean, Steelers, they just always find a way to win. I swear I could go out there and quarterback and somehow I'd have a winning record. It's just amazing, and I just think that Tomlin and his team, his crew, have been able to get him to play within. I mean, I haven't seen it, and you've probably seen more of his play than I have. I've not seen a lot of the old Russell Wilson where he would immediately take off scrambling, and he would, he's done that, but I've seen more of him staying back and going through his progressions and hitting his receivers than he did even as a Seahawk. So it just seems to work. Even when they weren't scoring touchdowns and they had to rely on field goals, he just, it seems to work for that team. So I just think I've always thought he was a better quarterback. I didn't know what was going on with the Denver situation. Will he ever be back to Seahawk form? That's a good question, but he's definitely better than what Peyton made him look like in Denver.
Less running, more moon balls is what I see.
Yeah, he's throwing the ball well deep, and they're running a lot more screens over the middle stuff, which the Steelers basically have not thrown the ball over the middle in 3 seasons. He's hitting guys over the middle. He's looked good. He's not the quarterback that Sean Payton wants. You can tell. Payton wants the guy's going to throw the quick slants, quick screens. He's getting the ball out right away. That's just not Russ's game. He's a play action guy. Throw deep, look around, make your second, third, fourth read. Where Payton you can see in Denver, and I think that's where Nix has gotten better. There is just getting the ball out quick and doing it. So I just think different styles. I have to be honest. I was 100% team Justin Fields. I did not want to see Russell Wilson at all this year. I want to see Fields the whole time. Russ has looked pretty freaking good. I mean, he's looked pretty good. Hey, if he throws for 400 yards and they score 40 points, I'm never going to complain ever again. And so I don't think they're going to do that against a lot of teams. Obviously, I think the Bengals defense is the major issue, but it was nice to see at least for a week. But Russ has been a really delightful surprise. I didn't think he had this season left in him, and he's looked pretty good.
Yeah, JT, Texans. Is there 3 games enough suspension for multiple dirty hit offender like Azeez Al-Shahir?
You know what? I think 3 games sounds about right. I mean, that's a decent amount of games. I like him as a player. I got him in a ton of IDP teams, but man, that was a bad shot. It was just like, dude, you got to know better than that. That was just clear and obvious. I also had a buddy send me a clip, and it was Mike Singletary doing the same thing to Dallas Cowboys quarterback in like 88 or 89, and he won hit of the year. If that tells you where we've come from in the NFL. And Singletary in the video was like, kind of felt bad they gave him hit of the year because he was like, I don't want anyone to have to get hit like that. That's, just a real bad position for people to get hurt. And he was like, kind of like trying to like talk it down. And I'm like, man, it's like, that's how far we've come in like the last 40 years, is that like you take a guy where you're sliding and just take his head off and they're like, champion, here's an award for it. Now we're like suspending guys for that. So I think that's a good thing. I mean, I'm always for keeping the hitting in football, but man, yeah, those type of slides where guys just take huge hits, you can't have it. I think 3 games is probably legit, and he's going to get a pretty huge fine in there too.
Yeah, that 85 Bears was when you watch the things of them like just knocking out David Archer,
destroying
and like
people. Man.
Yeah, even the Lions quarterback. What the hell was his name? Wasn't Fuller. But I mean, just picking guys up on the turf and like holding their hands up and watching them fall. They knocked them out like dead cold.
Body slamming guys left and right. But yeah, it's just a different league back then. But you want to keep the hits in. But yeah, those dirty hits and the crazy things, like they got to figure something out, especially with the sliding. It's like the quarterbacks are waiting way too long to slide, and then the guys are already half jumping. And it's like some of them you're like, okay, that was blatant and like it was bad. But half the time the guys start sliding after the guy's already like lunging at them. And you're like, how these guys are good athletes, but you can't just adjust in the air when you're already moving. You can't move your body. So that's a tough one for me. I think they need to have a talk with all these quarterbacks. Either slide or don't slide. Like make up your mind. It's like they're half and half all the time, and then guys don't know whether to hit them or not.
Then you get the bullshit really like Will Levis did, where you fake a slide, you run for a touchdown because the guy's afraid to hit you, kind of thing. Or
the couple times they've done it on the sideline, where guys don't want to hit a guy on the sideline and they act like they're going to step out, so then they kind of let up and then they cut back in, and you're like, it's like you got to make a decision on that. You got to tell quarterbacks like, hey, either give yourself up or you don't, and if you don't, we're going to not throw flags when you start getting hit all the time. For doing stuff like that. So it's a tough spot for the refs and everybody, but we definitely don't want to see star QBs, main guys getting hit like helmet hits like that and get knocked out. I mean, that's terrible for the game.
Jeff Titans. JT is not allowed to chime in on this question, okay? So it's just you. Minus the sacks, Will Levis is actually a pretty decent quarterback, right?
If he has Westbrook Akine to throw to, apparently. You said decent. Yeah, he's a decent QB. I don't know that he's, I don't know that he's a future, Pro Bowler or a future star, but I think he's serviceable. And I think he, I think depending on what Tennessee does in the offseason, I mean, they kind of started gutting that team. And I think depending on what they surround him with and how they improve the offensive line, I think that he can, I think he can flourish. Will he ever, like I said, will he ever be a Pro Bowler? I don't think so. But is he a decent QB? Yes.
Okay. You got one guy offering you a mid-second round pick to get rid of either Bryce Young or Will Levis. Which one are you getting rid of?
Bryce Young.
Yeah, I just had that decision. I got like probably what's going to be like the 203, 204, and I had one guy was desperate quarterback. So I'm like, I'd rather just get rid of Bryce Young. I think that even though he's got draft capital and he throws for 180 yards and a touchdown maybe, and it's nothing special every game. And he's never going to be a fantasy stud, And that's what we do is we play fantasy football, not real football. So, JT, who would you keep? Will Levis or Bryce Young?
Oh, you know me. That's a toughie. I'm probably selling Levis, though it's real close. It's real close. Yeah, they're both guys I want to get. I'm still in shock and amazement that we were debating CJ Stroud or Bryce Young for number one. I was on CJ Stroud all day, every day, and I still am surprised people were like dead set on Bryce Young. I was like, really? I'm like, really? Okay. So yeah, I'm just glad I won that argument. That's all.
JT Vikings. So the Daniel Jones signing means that they have no plans to sign Sam Darnold long terms, right?
So this is going to be interesting to what the Vikings are going to do. Like JJ's had multiple knee procedures here in the offseason. They already knew he was a super young guy. Do they go into next season expecting him to start, or do they go, hey, we're in win now mode, and we know how quickly these windows can collapse in on us here? Do they keep momentum and keep Darnold? And is this just like, hey, we signed Daniel Jones just in case something happens to Darnold because we think we're in the win now? Or do you move? I'm not moving on from Darnold for Daniel Jones personally. I'd much rather have Darnold. So I don't know what this. To me, I think they're just doing this as a signing, going, hey, we know we're going to be in the mix this year. What if a QB injury happens like last year? we're going to do Daniel Jones for this year because we're not having to eat his whole huge monster contract. So to me, I don't think this is any kind of slight on Darnold. I really don't. I think it's them being careful that, like, hey, we have somebody ready to go because this team does have the ability to win. And again, I think the NFC is pretty wide open. I mean, it's Eagles, Lions, Vikings. I mean, it really is. So, I mean, you're the Vikings, you're right in the mix there. So I think it's just a smart move by them to try to solidify in case anything happens.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Jeff, number 32. When can I expect my Ben Sinnott breakout to happen?
2025.
It's going to happen. Zach Ertz is going to get Zach Ertz.
Well, that's just it. Who expected, Zach Ertz to last an entire season? And again, the season's not over, but if barring an injury, I just don't think you're going to see it this year. You'll probably, again, next year, I think he's definitely a guy that I have in a few of my leagues and I'm holding on to them, and he's not going anywhere. I think he's going to be, Ertz will be 96 next year, or old enough. And with his injury history, just because you get through one season doesn't mean it's going to last. Like I said, barring an injury, you're not going to see it this year.
No. That is all 32 teams, folks. That was our little run through. They go a little longer than possible. We already know that, but we have fun doing this stuff, so I don't care how long it takes. So, Jeff, introduce yourself again. Where can everybody find you at? What's going on with the world of fantasy football stuff with you?
You can find me on X at ffcommish_YIS, and also on Blue Sky at ffcommish_YIS, no underscore there. I am I'm still in the process of working out details on getting a podcast going, so nothing more to announce there. And as far as just like the rest of you, just spending a lot of time making sure that my leagues are taken care of, commissioning them, making certain everybody's on top of everything and understanding what's going on. And that's really where I'm at right now.
JT, unfold to the world all the things that JT Orange does in the fantasy football world.
I'll try to keep it short. You can check me out on the show, The Stew with JT Brew. I got my college betting show every Tuesday night coming down to the playoffs. We've got conference championships this week. That show will be on later tonight, usually about 11 Eastern, 10 Central time. We do that show. Also, Around the Ice is our hockey show here on Fantasy and Frames. That usually runs about 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central here on Tuesday nights. So check out both those shows tonight. And then later this week, I'll have Shoot the Gap with Jorge, our IDP show, and my IDP Plays and Phase article that comes out on Fantasy and Frames will be out there as well. That's mostly what I got in the mix now. If you're looking for Dynasty risers and fallers, I do an article every week for Fantrax at Fantrax HQ. You can check that over there. And then I always have my IDP rankings over at DLF. And I'm also been jumping in on doing some drafts. So if you're looking at the 2025 draft, I did my 2025 first and second round mock and my 2026 first round mock. Both of those are up over on the site as well.
All right. Very good. You can find me, John McGlynn 75 on X. I'm lucky enough to be part of the Fantasy and Frames family of podcasts. I've been busy the last couple of weeks hunting and Thanksgiving, things like that. So I'll get one out this week and throughout the playoffs. So that'll be it. We will talk later. We have another show coming up where we'll talk about some trades, some other things like that. We'll get together on that, but as of right now, thank you very much for watching the Dynasty, being part of the Dynasty Evaluation show, and we'll talk to you later.